I'm Dane Rose, and in this video I want to explore the dangers of psychedelics and consciousness exploration. And the first thing we have to look at is, what are the dangers? So, number one, ignorance. Not knowing our makeup, and not knowing that just about anything is positive or negative depending on its relationship with all the variables around. So you have things like it's understanding that it's not about the thing. It's about the thing in ecological relationship with everything else. So are rabbits good? Depends. Are they, so everything is divine, everything is positive on one level. So it's all relative to our values. So who can say what those should be? Well, it's up to us. Introducing rabbits to Australia decimated an ecosystem. Introducing rabbits to a lonely autistic boy may increase the quality of life and well-being and happiness for that boy by 300-400%. So is it the rabbit or is it the ecology? So danger number one is ignorance, because everything, and particularly something potent, let's take dynamite. Is dynamite good? Well, for the fisherman who throws dynamite into the ocean and wants a quick haul, it could be the best thing since sliced bread. For the police officer who enforces the anti-dynamiting fish laws and gets a bonus every time he catches someone dynamiting, that bonus could help him pay off his gambling debt. So for the police officer, it's good. For the fisherman, it's good. For the marine biologist who's trying to protect the coral, it's absolutely terrible. And so it's all in relationship to everything else. And, the same is true for psychedelics and consciousness exploration. So ignorance about the ecological nature of any substance is the first danger, because Erich Fromm, in his great book, Escape from Freedom, talks about the incredible relief that we have as human beings when we can give our power to another human being. To shame-based, in the First World War, Germany experienced tremendous defeat, and loss of faith, tremendous poverty, tremendous shame. When we experience trauma, defeat, shame, we don't know what to do. We know that the system that we were following is not to be trusted. We were out there waving flags and hooray for Germany and all that. And then this is where it got us. We're decimated. Nobody likes us around the world. What do we do? And when we don't know, the thing we want to do more than anything else is find someone who knows. And so who knows? Well, it's someone who's charismatic, confident, and all that. Hitler comes along. What a relief to have someone who knows, who has, who's someone who has the way. Doesn't matter if it's a priest, doesn't matter if they've got your interest at heart, doesn't matter if they think they know what's best for you. There's a great relief in trusting the experts. And so in any bell curve of, throughout history, a bell curve is basically the process by which a meme, an idea, a product, a technology, etc., every single creation has a bell curve. And at the beginning of the bell curve, it's very vulnerable, and it has to compete with all these other things. And if it is successful, whatever that is, an idea, a meme, let's take psychedelics. So it began to take hold, got whacked down. It's beginning to take hold again. It's on a bell curve. Now, it's highly probable, given the potentiality, the potency, and the potential that is released by that potency, it's highly probable that in the next 1,000 years, psychedelics will have a useful and big bell curve. Kind of see what's happening with marijuana these days. It's kind of going along this bell curve. Now, at some point, you have the early adopters. The early adopters are people who are turned on, who are actively and proactively seeking out the newest and latest stuff and seeing how it can help them. Now, these are often highly intelligent, highly confident, and sometimes thrill-seeking. It can be an addiction, an adrenaline rush. The people that fly the first hang gliders or the first kite surfers, you look at that early, or the Wright brothers. You look at the cycle of any technology, and it is risky at the beginning. It's still risky in terms of financial things. In the history of aircrafts, the industry as a whole has lost money for the entire history of the industry of flying, flying people. So it's still a risky technology from a business point of view. But you have, high risk people interested in pushing the envelope. Now, a good percentage of these people in a very potent technology will die or go bankrupt. That's a reality. And we're still in that stage of psychedelics. Now, it has there's a whole range of risks, and we'll get into that. But then those risks get smoothed out. Kite surfing today is safer than it has ever been. Hang gliding today, safer than it's ever been. Flying today, safer than driving a car. So it has this bell curve, and then at some point, everyone's doing it, and then you have the people who are risk averse, and they don't want to do anything different because it's risky to be a minority in a culture that historically attacks its minorities. As a humanity, the majority has often been unkind to its minorities, which from a social point of view makes the minority, increases the risk for the minority. But before anything, the ring I'm wearing, the jacket I'm wearing, the haircut, before anything at all in our world, every single thing, that's in my life, etc., began as a minority. And it's whether it makes it through that very competitive, very difficult process into that, the majority bell curve. But then at some point, it is superseded by something new. buy something new, a new religion, a new belief, a new technology. It's all technology. Every technology, every pattern is superseded by a more efficient, and it's on some level efficient. And what I mean by that is it may take a little bit more energy than the last technology, but it delivers more value per unit of energy consumed than the technology that went before it, or it does not succeed. Now, politics, of course, distorts and gets that in the way, as we see with the hemp history, where one of the more influential people, Randolph Hearst, sways laws, banning hemp to increase the value of his timberlands. So you do have these things where hemp actually produces better, longer-lasting paper for less money. So how is a rich person gonna get the maximum profit from their timber forest? Well, it's easy. You use all your political influence in the papers to sway things in that direction, and then their income goes up. And so this is the self-serving aspect of our nature and of politics and money that sometimes overrides the purely technical thing. I mean, our school system is a joke in terms of the amount of energy and time it consumes for the amount of valuable information it delivers and the amount of empowerment it provides. It's a joke. However, the amount of invested interests in the infrastructure and politics and all that, to go from that to a multidimensional virtual reality learning system that is informed and potentiated by an AI that says, over the next 100 years of humanity, these cutting-edge skills will be within the probability field of our future, the single most important skills on the planet. And you, my friend, sticking on your goggles and headset, are going to learn how to transform garbage dumps into art, into some of the newest and most valuable materials yet unknown to human beings. And I, the AI, is going to continuously update your device, and in 3 hours a day, with plenty of time to spare, with no arcane, vast schoolyards and weird buildings stuck out that sit empty most of the time, you're going to have more information than you've ever had before. And that's going to happen for the cost in electricity of 25 cents to charge your device. And that's delivering in an active learning interaction where you get to virtually engage and simulate how to do that and interact with people all around the world based on skill set and passion. Well, is that a more efficient and effective technology for teaching our next generation? Sure. Is it going to get a single cent of our federal budget this year? Probably not. Because the school union doesn't want it. The contractors for all the buildings in the school don't want it. The principals don't want it. The politicians don't want to alienate those groups. Who wants this? Who wants it are children who don't yet know enough to know that they want it and who can't vote. So, I mean, this is a distortion factor within this efficiency. But nonetheless, once $1 billion, company owns that system and starts getting enough weight behind it to sway politics and stuff, then they will want it to sell it. And we may, evolve. And so that's kind of this curve of, early adoption to a point where a majority are then using it, and then a majority doesn't want to not be a part. The majority wants to be part of the majority because minorities get treated so badly. And so we are largely held back, in fact, by our dishonor towards our minorities, because it is our minorities that are the seeds of our future and our potential. And so one of the most self-negating things that we can possibly do in the world is create a culture that attacks minorities, which is our culture, which is a very self-negating thing to do. Because everything new begins at the beginning of this bell curve in the minority. So right now, we have the government, which will, for your own safety, throw you in prison, traumatize you, steal all your money, blah, 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 for being part of this minority, the minority of people that want to understand consciousness enough. The technology of consciousness, which is probably the single most important technology that we can possibly develop to increase the grace, the self-love, the speed at which we evolve, so as not to use the vastly inefficient political and other structures that we are using today to destroy our species in the next 200 years. Just did a little video biopic on the cost of a child. Do you know how much gasoline is going to be spent so that you and I can enjoy this quality of life over an 80-year lifespan? 90,000 gallons. Do you know how much waste is going to end up in landfill because of you and I? 100 tons apiece. Do you know how much CO2 you and I, within our current structures, are going to put out in the atmosphere? 1,500 tons. Because you exist, because I exist. That's how inefficient we are. That to live this life within this infrastructure, the infrastructure that this level of consciousness thinks is the top of the line, that's just a small slice. Consciousness needs to change. And the technology of consciousness, meditation, psychedelics, altered states, tantra, altered states, partnering and relationship skills. These are the most vital skills we need as a species at this time. And to varying degrees, with psychedelics leading the way in suppression, this is a potent minority where science is not applied. I mean, science is actively deterred and barred. I mean, you just read the study of MAPS, the amount of effort that our government puts to, put the kibosh on a simple study on how to save taxes by solving PTSD with MDMA. The amount of resistance and hostility, the amount of effort that someone has to do to get something to grow just a little bit when it's in this minority status, which is often feared by the majority. The way we love our minorities is the way we love our future. Everything that is most valuable has yet to be discovered. And the way it will be discovered is by developing who we are as human beings. Consciousness is an important part of that. So ignorance and hostility towards minority, a refusal to even allow science, which is a pretty dominant paradigm. Science has competed. The church has attacked it, just like every minority. Science was a minority, just like psychedelics is today. And in one of the great ironies of, it's kind of flipping. So religion attacked science. Now science is attacking religion. Soon, many religions will be minorities. That everything has its bell curve, and then it's replaced with something more efficient. And the dominant voice often is in a scarcity mentality, in part because of its past trauma. This is where the child comes around to inflict on the parent the wound that was inflicted on the child. The parent abuses the child. The child grows up and abuses the parent. It's not a good system. You need the majority to love, respect, honor, and care for its minorities, so that in the inevitable cycle of evolution, when the minority becomes the majority, it doesn't turn around and enact patricide, the revenge on the parent, the revenge on the unfriendly parent. And this is a cycle that's in play. So ignorance is our enemy, and the hostility towards minorities is promoting our ignorance. Now, it's actually rather good in some ways, given our level of ignorance. I mean, we don't want, in my opinion, a hippie kind of mentality going into these heightened states of consciousness. We don't want, it's all good, whatever, no science, just nature is... We don't want that kind of abandonment of intimacy, of nuanced awareness with our technologies. Our electrical system, our highway system, efficient systems, they're regulated with scientific principles. It's not we don't have people at our power grid saying, if it feels good, let's give them 1,000 volts this day. We had some nice refrigerators working at 110 volts. Let's give them 1,000. We're feeling abundant today. No, you don't want to fry everything up. And so the more potent the substance and the technology, the more respect needs to be given to this basic understanding that it's not the thing that is good. It is rather the intention and the skillful application of more and more potent and efficient technologies towards moving towards our human values, quality of life, well-being, etc. That's good. And so, on the one hand, psychedelics were whacked down. On the other hand, it's forced. And it's very sad that, we couldn't have both. We couldn't have an infusion of science to catch up with, that kind of sloppy thing that is more and more synthetic, potent substances. I mean, you can be somewhat sloppy with coca leaves because you can't overdose with a coca leaf. But when you've got, cocaine at 1,000 times the natural density, you can overdose. So it requires, the greater the potency, the more that one needs to show respect for the technology. And so, but nonetheless, having had this very unsophisticated kibosh, just hurled at the whole psychedelic minority, faction with its kind of growing within the culture, digging out of that is neuroscience, medicine, bold, systematic, very nuanced technology that is pushing against this kind of majority shutdown energy that is in some ways leading to a more safe and more conscious application prior to the majority, because pendulums swing back and forth. So we've had the opening swing of kind of like it's all good, it's all love, to the it's all evil, it's all bad. And now we're swinging back to it's good in this situation 38% of the time. It's good in this situation with this demographic 87% of the time. It's better than, these, it's better than these depressive medicines in side effects. So you've got comps because, of course, the majority, when it pushes down an effective technology, usually does so in loyalty to less effective technologies that, it basically subsidizes. Like, come on, drug companies, you can create something as good as marijuana. It's like, yeah, we can't. But they do their best, and that develops the science and technology. So I would say, dangers, ignorance, the wanting to give our authority to take, there's this wonderful simplistic bliss of, is it good, is it bad, is it the good stuff, is it the bad stuff? It's like, I take the good stuff from good people for good reasons, and that's it. But that's not enough. It has to be more nuanced than that. There has to be more science, more care, more respect for protocol, for science, for the laws that affect, human mental, emotional, physical health and spiritual well-being. And so that's danger, and that's kind of the response. And psychedelics are in this terrain where we're slowly moving back, and we're doing so largely within the terrain of science. But within that context, we are now in the early adopter phase. And we have pioneers. Terence McKenna, there's Orlock, fellow. There's another fellow on 5-MeO DMT. I'm not remembering the names. But there are pioneers, and we need these pioneers. Every early adoptive technology requires its pioneers. And our history says that a majority of these pioneers will fail, that the weight of hostility of the culture against them will bankrupt them, make them depressed, they'll in pioneering some new substance die of an overdose or go off the deep end in some aspect, and just get imbalanced due to all this weight of fear and stuff pushed at them, and the absence of science. Whenever you push something underground, it makes it harder for the science to be done that would create safety. I mean, just imagine if electricity was pushed underground and there's a complete ban on any tests no one can publish anything about electricity. Well, of course, more people are going to get shocked because the technology is going to evolve less frequently. So this is threat number one, and danger number one. And what it means is that you and I have to work harder and think more to have a chance of, because the great irony, and the reason it's so, just look at read Elon Musk's biography, and just look at the enormous amount of hostility on multiple levels that attack this man on his way to create, the world's best solar car, the world's best electric car, the United States' biggest solar energy company, and the world's best space company. From friends to government to investors to wife to newspaper press, you look at the hostility coming at him on his way to breakthrough, and you kind of get a sense that this is the kind of thing that's being pressed in various ways on this psychedelic fringe. And yet, it is possible, in asteroid-type dynamics, which is good to be aware of. We're in a probability field where we could get wiped out by an asteroid. And Elon, going against all that pressure, may be the man who plays a pivotal role in us having a colony out there. And, just listening and talking to these ideas, there's a majority of people who the effort to think and do the data and backup analysis is so uncomfortably large. It's just easier to hit this idea and say, oh, quack, give me a break. That sounds radical, too much. It's easier to say that than to think. And we're up against that. We need to think. I'll see you on the next video.